one of the most watched videos that I've ever done was when I was explaining how I was utilizing a cooler dry hop method taken from Scott Janish's new IPA. And at that point, when he was writing that book, Sapwood was doing essentially like a soft crash or a crash from, let's say, 68F to 72F, something like that, down into the low 60s or high 50s F. They were then harvesting the majority of the yeast off of that tank and dropping the rest of its contents and then beginning the dry hopping there. Okay. I believe he's taken that further now, and I believe they're dry hopping closer to 32 or 0. And then implementing like super extreme like CO2 rouses. But that's where this whole thing is coming from. So I had done a video about that, and when, I don't know if I told you this before, but I know that I don't know everything about brewing. But what I do with the channel and when I show what I'm doing in the brewery, I'll say, this is my process based on what I'm reading or researching right now. This is going to change. This is going to evolve, but this is what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I've done that cool dry hop technique where you try to, obviously there's still going to be cells in the tank. You do that dry hop, and then, you move on through packaging. What is obviously different practices work for different people in different spaces. What is your concern with that process? Is it that at the lower temperature, you are delaying the effects and you're pushing them downstream closer to a package? Is that a concern, or are there other things that can be popping up for people if they take that route? And again, this isn't saying like, I'm not trying to get you to be like, oh, this is good, bad, or otherwise. I think it's good for people to understand the potential range of outcomes with the different practices that you're using. So what's your thought on that soft crash, cool dry hop method based on the research that you've done?
Yeah. There's so much, there's a lot of different ways I want to think or start about, but I'll say, if you do cold dry hopping, you just need to make sure you're giving it the time to clear dry hop creep. So when you think about enzyme kinetics or reaction kinetics, the two things that are really pushing those reactions to move, you can think of it like a waterfall. You want high concentration and high temperature. You have to think about these beers and the molecules within a 30-barrel vessel, 15-barrel vessel. You have your enzyme down here, or you have the yeast down here and a sugar over here. If you're at a low temperature and a low density, you have them really far apart, and they're just kind of drifting through space like this. And then not only do they have to find each other, but they have to bump into each other at the correct orientation. So if you have a high amount of yeast and sugar, and they're all going around like this at 70 Fahrenheit, they're going to bump into each other a lot faster. They're going to be moving around the tank. Temperature is a measure of molecular motion. And so,
can you repeat that sentence that you just said?
Temperature is a measure of molecular motion.
Okay.
That's all temperature is. It's actually the measure of molecular movement. And so when you're at those colder temperatures, you're asking the reaction to take significantly longer. You're asking that reaction to be elongated. And then when you remove a lot of the yeast, you're going to say, not only are you going to take a long time to find your reaction partner, but you're also going to, it's going to be harder to find them because there's so few yeast left. I will say, I've met someone that changed my mind, Hernan Castellini down in Buenos Aires, makes beautiful hazy IPAs. The first thing I always ask the brewers, what's your dry hop process? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I dry hop cold, da da da. And then we talked about his process, and he does a really cool process and gets the beer to kind of move over the hops consistently. And I think that he's inducing the molecular motion, right? He's pushing it through. But then he does the most important step, which is time. He gives it the time to do what it needs to do. And so cold dry hopping, great. Dropping bad stuff off the bottom of the tank, awesome. But if we're just thinking about it from a reaction standpoint, you're asking it to take longer. And I do get concerned if you don't give it an extra week or two to finish out that reaction, it's going to happen in the package. If you don't have a lot of distribution, you're only doing tap room kind of sales, and you're only doing stuff like that, you're maybe okay. It's not going to like catch up to you, so to speak. But there are places that do that, and then they have an IPA sit on tap for a month or two, and then their beer has diacetyl, and they're like, where did this come from? Did you rush that beer? What happened there? Or it doesn't taste like it should, and out of a keg a month later. The main thing about hop creep is to give it the time to let the reaction do what it needs to do. And so dry hopping cold can be fine. I am, when I was working at Bearded Iris, we dry hopped very early and warm. And that allowed that primary fermentation that you wanted to happen to coincide with the secondary fermentation of hop creep almost at the same time. And so we were never waiting on that second diacetyl peak to move. We were actually always waiting on the gravity to be consistent. And so I think that there's a lot of different methods to it, but on the podcast I did with Vinny is very adamant about yeast health. If you want the reaction to proceed, you need to make sure that yeast is happy, healthy, not about to go to sleep and say, let me cozy down in my flocculation tunnel and be happy down here. You want it to be ready to go for new sugar. You want it to be ready to take on glucose, malt, anything that's coming down at it. So I think this is just the reactionary side point. If you like the way that an IPA tastes when you do a cold dry hop, you just need to allow for that time. Like the time is the most important thing. Your dry hop process can be whatever you want, but you need to let that reaction happen or you're going to have bad side effects down the line.